Hey, hello again. Dr. Johnson here. It's great to welcome you back. I think this is our 21st session on this. I don't know how many, 27 I think was what we're going to. But today, a very interesting topic. I like this topic, and I hope you do too. Have you ever heard of spiritual direction? Today is about virtue and spiritual direction. That's what it's about. So what is this thing called spiritual direction? Well, there are people who get degrees and certificates in spiritual direction. And what is it about? What's a spiritual director supposed to be doing? Well, the overall goal of spiritual direction is to help, I don't like this word, but that's what they use, help the directee. Sounds a little manipulative to me, but that's just me. They help the directees deepen their relationship with God. Pretty big deal there. Spiritual direction could be described as, quote, walking with another, helping them gain a clearer vision of the interior forces and factors that both expand or contract their own, get this, spiritual personality. Now, we've talked about spiritual personality before in our series here. In a spiritual personality, there are 6 functions of the personality: believing, perceiving, thinking, feeling, deciding, and acting. And when you take the spiritual strengths profile, you find out what specific virtue is the prime motive driver of each of those 6 functions of the personality. So the spiritual strengths profile is used in spiritual direction. And there you go. So how might the tools of spiritual direction, the goals of spiritual direction, overlap with the value of understanding the inner workings of your own personality offered by the spiritual strengths profile? Well, the goals of spiritual direction overlap with personality development and inner spiritual understanding. So I've got some of this whole chapter in the book that's coming out. There's 26 items here that I see in the book, but I don't want to go over all 26. I might bore you here. So I've selected some to give you kind of a taste of the connection between virtue and spiritual direction, between virtue and understanding your inner spiritual personality. And we've already talked about the consequence of that: virtue and healing and inner happiness, true inner happiness. So here we go. This is the 4th one out of 26. Your 6 signature virtue strengths, spiritual strengths, introduce you to new vistas of self-knowledge and self-understanding of how virtue is God-given and hence true drivers of your personality. Well, that's kind of a theme that we've been talking about all along in this series, is that that's the hidden power of virtue. And the hidden power is, virtue is the power that is behind the operation of your personality. That's basically our thesis here. So another one, knowing your 6 spiritual virtue strengths gives you the insight to construct a new personality coherence, bringing the disparate parts of your personality together into a more harmonious whole. Now, as a professional counselor, I'm trying to do that, or trying to help my patients, counseling patients, to do exactly that, to take the disparate parts and sometimes the frenetic parts of your personality that are in turmoil and bring them into coherence, bring them into harmony, which is a virtue. You see that? Of course. So I wrote a little statement for each one of these, and the statement I wrote for this one is, your virtue strengths, that is your spiritual strengths, form your true self. Your true self. Your shadows and compulsions are going to form, as I think we've talked about before, what we would call your false self, your ego self. There's a lot more we could say about that, but that's not in this section. So, Here's something that I think is really very important and is something that is standard in spiritual direction and certainly in personality development from my standpoint anyway, and that is that your 6 signature virtue strengths allow you to live in the tension created by your shadows and your compulsions. These are what I call sometimes the paradoxical forces in you that can tear the fabric of your personality coherence and inflame your spirit. That's quite a bit. These are the things, these shadows and compulsions, that can inflame your spirit. Sounds like turmoil, doesn't it? So my little prayer here is your imperfections always point to the possibility of perfection. Now, I don't think there can be perfection on this earthly plane, but hopefully we're moving towards that as we move beyond this earthly plane. So what I'm trying to say is here, your shadows and your compulsions are actually quite valuable. We don't want to just try to get them away. Why are they valuable? Why would a shadow or a compulsion be valuable? Because it helps you to define your spiritual strength. You know, if I just said hope, well, hope's kind of an abstraction, but it becomes more real when I say, well, the absence of hope is despair, and the extension and the perversion of hope is presumption. Now you get a much better understanding of what hope is and how it might operate within your personality. Here's the next one. Your 6 spiritual virtue strengths point out those shadows and compulsions that are most likely to divide you. Well, sure, when you take your spiritual strengths profile, you not only get your 6 what I call spiritual strengths, which each one drives a different facet or function of your personality, but you also get the shadows and compulsions of those, which are telling you this is the stuff that can tear your fabric of your personality apart. So you see the tension we live in? We need the shadows and compulsions, which is all the work of the ego, because it does tell us about the world and does protect us from things in the world, from the real fears in the world. But if we let that ego or that false self take over, then we drift into a no man's land, so to speak, a real swamp or a desert, either one, which undercuts the true value of who you are and prevents you from moving forward in personality and spiritual development. Here's another one. Your 6 signature virtue strengths help you embrace the inner healing power that God has intentionally invested in you. See, each one of these is one of the goals of spiritual direction. I didn't make these up. These are goals of spiritual direction. I'm not a certified spiritual director, but I do a lot of spiritual directing, I think, in my own patients. And how did I know that? I've done a lot of reading in spiritual direction, and I've talked a lot to other spiritual directors about the overlap between professional counseling and spiritual direction. So what I call my counseling is positive spirituality, positive happiness counseling is basically what I call it and what I try to practice. Another one. Your 6 signature virtue strengths give you rest in Jesus, in Jesus's healing ministry. You know, there's many places in Scripture where you can point to this, but Jesus never said, when he heals somebody, whatever it might be, he never says to them, go your way, I just healed you. No. What does he say? He always says, go your way, your faith has healed you. Well, what is faith? Faith is one of the 3 theological virtues. Faith, hope, charity. Theological virtues. Or sometimes people call faith, hope, and love. In any event, spiritual direction has to do with virtue. In my little statement here, I say faith on faith on faith. All I can do is rest in your faith, Lord. Another one. Your 6 signature virtue strengths move you away from an inaccurate or insufficient self-definition based on your small ego self and help you find your true home in your much bigger true self. So my little prayer statement here. Lord, you did not make the low self-esteem that sometimes strangles my heart and force feeds me with lies about who I am. In other words, that whatever low self-esteem I might have or other people might have is not coming from their virtue strengths. Humility does not give you, the virtue of humility does not give you low self-esteem. It's self-abasement that would give you low self-esteem. When you take humility to its most illogical extension, that is, when you pervert it, it becomes self-abasement. Well, that's not humility. Humility is basically saying the truth. I am this. The world is that. It's basically an extension of the virtue of trust. And let's see, I'll give you one more here. Your 6 signature virtue strengths offer you the most positive vision of where you are going. Well, where are you going? I guess that depends upon your goals, right? And what your expectations about where you are going. And it's not only where you are going in this world, it's where you are going after this world. So my little prayerlet here is, Lord, help me take off my blinders. Help me turn on the windshield wipers of my soul so that I can see where I want and need to go. Well, this is just a small taste I've tried to give you today about the connection between virtue, and specifically the virtues that are your signature virtue strengths, and this whole notion of spiritual direction. Because the goals of the SP, the Spiritual Strengths Profile, and all of what we're talking about here are quite in line with the goals of spiritual direction. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing you again, and God be with you.